Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Red Planet Live. I am your host, Ashton Zeth. I am elated to be hosting the Mars Society's podcast and leading the conversation about human exploration of the universe and the future settlement of Mars. As a longtime space enthusiast, I am passionate about STEM education and making humanity an interplanetary species. Thank you, everyone, for joining today and supporting Red Planet Live. So today's guest is actually a returner to Red Planet Live. This will be his second time on the podcast. Leonard David is a space journalist, author, and freelance writer who has reported on space activities for over 50 years. His work has been published in a variety of media sources, including Space.com, the Financial Times, Foreign Policy, Astronomy, Space News, and his own blog, Inside Outer Space. Leonard has also written or co-authored numerous books over the years, including Moonrush, the New Space Race, published by National Geographic in May of 2019. Mr. David has also authored Mars, Our Future on the Red Planet. And this one's pretty cool. Leonard has also co-authored a title with Apollo 11's Buzz Aldrin called Mission to Mars, My Vision for Space Exploration. Thank you, Leonard, so much for being here today.
Terrific. Love to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excited to chat with you. Well, before we dive in, as usual, just have a couple Mars Society announcements to share. The first is don't forget to save the date. The 2024 International Mars Society Convention is taking place Thursday, August 8th through Sunday, August 11th at the University of Washington campus in Seattle. Go Cougs. Speaking of the annual convention, the Mars Society is calling for abstracts. Presentations for the annual international convention are invited. Abstracts between 150 to 300 works can be uploaded to the Mars Society abstract page on the Mars Society website. Please note that the deadline for submitting abstracts for consideration is Friday, June 28th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Lastly, one more, the Mars Society is hosting its annual poster design contest. So if you have a knack for creativity, graphic work, love Mars, space exploration, this is your chance to shine. The winning design will be used as the primary promotional graphic for the annual convention, again happening August 8th through 11th this August. And to enter, just put together your poster design that captures this theme and send it to postercontest@marssociety.org. No later than Wednesday, May 15th, again, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. All right. And all of those things are listed on the Mars Society's website. So check that out for more details. All right. So let's dive in. Leonard, like I mentioned to you before, on the podcast, I have a segment called Question of the Day. So this is just meant to be an icebreaker, no right or wrong answer. But I thought from one interviewer, writer to another, I thought this would be fun. So today's question of the day is, if you could interview any space or science person, who would it be and why? Now, I know you have a long resume and you've already done, spoken with many before, but if you could interview any space or science person, who would it be?
Somebody alive, I assume.
You know what? I'll leave that up into interpretation. Maybe they've passed and you didn't get a chance to speak with them. Who would it be?
Wow. I'll be honest with you. I don't have anything that jumps out at me right now. I'd like to sit down with Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator. I think he's in hot water. And even though he's cool when he talks,
you got some hard-hitting.
That guy's got some issues budgetarily, and NASA and all the Mars sample return. He's got a lot of programs going on at once. And listening to him the other day, I've interviewed him once, but I would like to get back and do a sanity check on how he's doing. He's been in the post now for a little while, and I'd say he's this last budget, even though it's, I guess, fairly big, he's got some real issues to deal with, and that would be an interesting conversation. Also, Lori Leshin is one of my favorites from head of JPL. Mm-hmm. In fact, I hope to be talking to Lori next week about Mars sample return and the whole Jet Propulsion Lab layoffs, and how does she feel walking into that position and having so many things go a little bit awry. She's
Sure.
got some great successes already, getting some spacecraft up, but she's another person's under duress.
So if you're getting the chance to speak with Lori next week, is there going to be an article published on your blog about it afterwards? Can I look
Yeah,
forward
if everything goes right, I'll let you know.
to it?
Yeah, I'm just negotiating on the time when we can do it, and she's busy and I'm busy, and we're trying to find
Sure.
a time.
Yeah.
But everything, that's a really important interview. But yeah, I think that, one of the interview. Let me go back in time a little bit. One of the pioneers that I really got to know was Kraft Ericke. He was an early pioneer in a vision like von Braun and some of the older Rocketeers. And he lived in San Diego, and I did, and I was working for Omni magazine at the time.
Hmm.
So I sent him a letter, because the internet wasn't there. And he said, "Yeah, come on up. I live over here in La Jolla." And we sat in his back patio with his wife serving tea and talked about his vision of the future. And that was a really great. He was fundamental in making the Atlas Centaur work,
Okay.
which was blowing up. Things were going awry, but he had a grand vision of where he thought politically, legally, sociologically, psychologically, where we're going.
Hmm.
I know that was a real riveting time for me to listen to somebody with that uh, grandeur of the space
Sure.
agenda ahead of us.
Okay. So you got a couple. Okay. Got a couple
Yeah,
potential
that
options,
was it.
and one, it sounds like it's in the works. If you can get a time narrowed down, that's like I said.
Yeah,
Possible.
yeah. He's gone. Kraft Ericke's gone.
Right.
He's long gone. But Laurie is going to be there, and Bill Nelson's. Like I said, they're in sweatshop operation now, as far as I'm concerned. They've got to they've got to deal with the budgets and programmatic oversubscription, and uh, Lori Glaze is the really the glue too at NASA headquarters that gave a great talk the other night at the Lunar Planetary Science Conference in Houston, Texas. They just wrapped that up last week.
Hmm.
But Lori, she's got to stand there in front of all her space science uh, public,
Right.
where she really uh, matured herself and explained how tough the budgets are and what tough choices are coming.
Hmm.
And it's not going to be easy. So she's another bright star in the in the constellation of worried people. you know, with dealing with budgets and the future.
Sure. Yeah, there's a few of those. I'd have to say for myself, if I could interview anybody at this moment, it would be astronaut Kelly Girardi. She's one of my favorites. She's been significant, impact in my life and being on this STEM career trajectory, and in a way, a catalyst for me being here today as host of the podcast. I've got her other side, her book over there,
Yeah.
which was influential in me volunteering to help with the Mars Society, and how I got this opportunity today. So would love to speak with her. That's a bucket list item. We're still working on that. So that would be my
Yeah.
first
Well,
interview.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool. Well, I want to remind everybody, if you have a question for Leonard, please put those in the chats. I'll try to sprinkle those throughout our conversation. We love audience engagement. So if you've got something, send it our way. But wanted to start the conversation with you, Leonard. As I mentioned, you've been an author and a writer for over 50 years, reporting on space activities. And I'm sure everybody is curious. You've witnessed a lot of remarkable milestones in space exploration in that time. What has been, the most significant breakthrough or moment that you remember during your time as a journalist?
I guess for me, I lived in California in my early days, and couldn't get to Florida. I couldn't do much on all the things that I was selling to the community there, the neighborhood, about picking up trash or or gardening or whatever, to get to Florida to see Saturn V launch. And so I
Mhm.
never got there, but I did in '81. I was working for the National Space Institute at the time, and they flew me to Florida to see the first shuttle launch in '81,
Mhm.
and seeing the shuttle go, the first flight, because you didn't know what was going to happen. They're
Mhm.
putting people on this for the first time. They're not going to, the shuttle didn't go up uncrewed before, so it's plugging two people in there, and they had supposedly ejection seats that they could get out.
Mhm.
But seeing that go, and I did think at the time, my God, we're here. This is it. The shuttle, reusable. It had all the buzzwords.
Mhm.
Fly back, airplane like operation. It had shut tiles. It had coming back, lands in the desert. And I was lucky enough to get out to the landing of the first shuttle in at Edwards Air Force Base. And that was a pretty, and seeing Bob, Crippen and Young, uh, John Young, get off that plane and walk over to the podium where we were standing and go, "We're here. It works great." you know, and you just thought, well, this is it. We're
This is
there.
the future.
Yeah. Yeah. All the buzzwords of the things we were after for reusability and shuttle airline like operation. And there we go. Now, the downside of all the shuttle stuff was on a bad day was Columbia, loss of Columbia.
Yeah.
Uh, and I covered that for space.com, and
Mhm.
going to Houston and sitting there for a lot of the mishap board, uh, trying to glue together what happened.
Yeah.
And it was a puzzle. I mean, and my memories of going to bars in Houston and meeting I couldn't talk about the people I met,
Mhm.
telling me what was going on inside, trying to put the tree together, the disaster tree. I mean, if this happened, then that could have happened, and then that could have happened,
Mhm.
and kind of everybody was in a funk. I mean, they lost their family,
Yeah.
and that was pretty tragic. And then another high point was the night that the Hubble telescope was defocused. I was at the Hubble Space Telescope Science Institute, and Gene Shoemaker and Carol Shoemaker were there, and some scientists, and we were all sitting there waiting for whether or not the Hubble was going to be okay,
Mhm.
because previously they promised us a look at the face of God with that thing,
Mhm.
and so we're all like, "Oh my God, is this thing going to ever be working?" And a woman ran in, probably Heidi Hamill, I think, ran in with a bottle of champagne, is all I remember, saying, "It works. We got the picture. It was in focus. It was incredible." And that was a great moment.
Mhm.
There's a lot of them. Just so many,
A
and
lot
I'm
of
hoping
highs.
I'll see some more.
Yeah, yeah. What would be next on your, your bucket list of things to report on? I imagine, humans getting to Mars would be one of those, but anything else that you want to see and report on?
Yeah, human mission to Mars would be, a dream.
Mhm.
Uh, now I'm just hoping we can get people back on the moon. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
living through the Apollo program, and not
Mhm.
only that, but the Mercury and the Gemini, and then Apollo and Apollo Soyuz. We just lost Tom Stafford here the other day.
All that.
A great. I got to meet him at one point, and he was as everybody knows, he was terrific. I mean, he was an
Hmm.
amazing guy. They were all amazing. So yeah, but I think getting back on the moon would be with humans, and how that's really going to happen. I mean, what
Hmm.
are we going to do? Are we going to rely on the Starship? Is Blue Origin going to come out of the blue with their lander device and be the one? I don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Something's coming. Something's coming. There's angst in the system, and I think NASA is going to have a reflection on where the Artemis program really is right now.
Hmm. Yeah, we're seeing a lot in the news about Artemis getting delayed. Artemis 2, next people to the moon, including first woman, person of color, and all of that is getting a little bit delayed. So I was wondering, is there a difference when it comes to reporting on government-led missions versus like private sector commercial? You think about like NASA versus SpaceX and Blue Origin. Is there a difference when you're reporting on those two sectors?
That's a great question, and it's a good thing to reflect on. We're definitely going through a transition phase where it's a lot of non-NASA things happening.
Right.
I mean, dealing with the Indian Space Research
Yeah.
Organization, they have a whole different kind of public affairs. Israel has they're going to get back in the moon business here, I gather, with another lander. But then we've just gone through some private initiatives with Astrobotic
Hmm.
and the intuitive machines.
Right. Yep.
And so there's a different feel to it compared to NASA. I'm not sure at this point I know whether it's good or bad, but there are definitely different types of communications that these groups are offering. I'd say, in my mind and my view, Astrobotic did a really good job of communicating to the media and the public what
Hmm.
was going on. Intuitive Machines, interesting. I'd say they kind of overshot their PR, and they had more issues there than we were led to believe. But on the other hand, they got down on the surface and skidded across and broke their legs, and they're going to get up and keep going. So, but that's a good question. I think there is a different tempo compared. NASA fed stuff. I mean, it's you know, God, the internet is just, you can go to any NASA center and there's so much stuff,
Hmm.
and after a while, you can't even keep track of all the websites and,
Right.
so I guess I'm not complaining. I'd rather have the information available.
Right. Yeah.
You
Have
know,
more than have less. Yeah.
yeah.
I have a goal. You know, I work for a technology company. I sell automation software. So I balance, tech and space and science at the same time. And so I have a goal for myself to read a space article, something in the news, whether it's a new space company or something significant has happened, like Intuitive Machines landing on the moon. And sometimes it's like just information overload. I don't know where to look. It's like there's a list of 10 articles I'd like to read today, but with time constraints, I can only get to maybe one or two of those. Do
Yeah.
you feel like that as well? Obviously, with the internet, the exploding commercial and private space industry, do you feel like there's just so much happening? It's hard to know what's going on everywhere.
It's sad to say, but I'm 70 something. How old am I, Barb? My wife knows. That's all.
She
Uh,
read it for you.
75, 76 in there. Um, I remember having a fax machine. That was a big deal. And I remember the day that a fax came through from a group called Iridium. They were going to launch, I think it was 66 satellites, using Russian rockets, any rockets they could find, India,
Mhm.
whatever. And I'm looking at the facts going, this is totally bizarre. How are they going to do all that? And here we are. You move up to today with Starlink, and Alon probably in the last 10 minutes put up
Another one.
another 77 Starlink satellites. So it's amazing to me what. And again, following all that live on the internet compared to a fax machine, it took a few seconds to give you the info. And anyway, the social media, the internet has made a giant difference. Uh, I think any reporter is probably on overload about what is available now, and picking and choosing article ideas. And frankly, one of the challenges I think today, because there's such an output of stuff, is trying to find articles that nobody is writing.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the one that I find more exciting. Is if I can get this out before everybody, I can sleep at night. I'm happy. This
Hmm.
old guy, I at least got the right connection of people, and I can get the story before anybody.
Still got
You don't have that competitive feel to it. You're kind of, lost in the hubris of the moment of journalism. But yeah, so getting all that social impact. I was on Mars today. I went to the Perseverance and Curiosity Mars sites, and I was on Mars. Okay, what's Curiosity looking at today? How's Perseverance doing?
it. Hmm.
Um, and it's really an amazing time now to be a participant, to watch success and failure and problems, and your firsthand accounts of you're there watching this stuff live, like
Hmm.
the Starship taking off the other day. I mean, it was amazing. Alon and the whole third flight of that. It's up for grabs how well it all worked, but boy, it worked well enough that Alon can move to the next fourth flight if the FAA gives them a go ahead.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, wow.
Well, speaking of Starship, I see we have a question here, and this is the right time to mix this in. So, question is from AC. Do you think Starship will eventually get us there, or be a disappointment like the shuttle?
Well, I don't consider this, a disappointment like the shuttle. You got to parse that out. Economically, it was, kind of a problematic thing with the shuttle.
Hmm.
They were supposed to fly, hundreds of those things every hour. That was what everybody was billing it for.
Hmm.
But I just looked at the Starship site that one of the groups has live cameras, and they're cleaning up the pad, getting ready for the next flight. And to his credit, I'm with him. I think this iteration of failure
Hmm.
is a good thing. And
Yeah.
I was old enough to remember how many Atlas failures there were, and Titan things were going awry, and it takes a while to get it right, and figure out why it's not working. And so Alon is on a pathway there to fix it. Now the timing of this thing, I think that's where NASA is going to have to crack the whip here. I mean, at some point, uh, because I even the other day I heard somebody moaning about the refueling in space of the Starship,
Hmm.
and what has to happen to get it to even to the moon. And so it's a cumbersome operation. So I'm not sure how this is all going to play out. But I think that's the drama of it all.
Hmm.
You know, and God, if it works, it's great. But making that routine, and that's where the shuttle was going. And unfortunately, NASA believed its own PR, and it was a routine. And then all of a sudden, foam's falling off, and you lose a wing, and you kill 7 people. And then you challenge her with an O-ring problem, you killed another 7 people. So you can look at the shuttle program as a death trap for some, but it really having a shuttle like operation would be a fantastic capability. Again, airline like operation, we're going to get there. It's going to be the way we're doing space transportation today is, I think, and there are days I think Wright brothers, we're at the stage where you have all these Wright brother type moments, and you had all these competitors come in, and they had a better engine, they had a better thing.
Hmm.
The canopy won't fall off. You can actually sit inside. All that's going to come about. And I'm ranting here, but I think we're really at a kind of a very turning point with space transportation. It's not going to be this way we're doing it. You can't put people on all that fuel and fly them out of here. I don't know if it's going to be anti-gravity or what's coming. My guess is something's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the physics is changing, and I think we're going to see some dramatic new capabilities in propulsion
Yeah.
that will make Starship and make the way we're doing rocket transportation look pretty black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It's
No,
color.
I completely agree with you. And that's part of the reason that the Mars Society is establishing the Mars Technology Institute is to develop that type of technology, specifically fuel and energy, so that we can get humans to Mars. So I like, how you've connected it to the Wright brothers. I mean, when they were the first ones doing it, you never would have projected or foreseen that, 100, 200 years later, we would have commercial airlines and aerospace like it is, that you can just buy a ticket to anywhere, and
Right.
it's become so regular, so routine, so normal to take flights, when at one point that wasn't even conceivable. So yeah, I agree with you that at some point, once we've been able to figure out the kind of the nuances and how we make this repeatable and cost effective, which is part of why the commercial and private space industry is so crucial here, because we're at a pivotal moment where we're going to see it expand, and it's going to become, taking a flight to the moon may eventually be like hopping on a flight from Washington to Florida, going to go
Yeah,
visit your
certainly
friend.
on watching the hypersonic activity going on right now, that's pretty interesting.
Mhm.
Right now it's more a warfare kind of thing. How do you get a bomb or H bomb to somebody quickly? But I think the whole technology of hypersonics is moving along, and that's something to watch. China apparently just the other day started crowing about they got a test track for a kind of magnetic levitation launcher. This is something that NASA has been uh, fooled around with numbers of years ago,
Yeah.
and you get back to Jerry O'Neill, and we're talking mass drivers and using rail guns on the moon to launch material into some L5 orbit, and then use it or make solar power satellites or what do you ever want to use.
Hmm.
But so yeah, there's always been dreamers, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
technology's got to catch up. The
Right.
materials is changing. Space elevator, I'm still, I want the up button on that one.
Yeah.
Uh, I got a feeling some of that's going to turn out to be very valuable in the future. So I'm saluting all those advanced efforts.
Yeah. Well, speaking of advanced efforts and dreamers and innovators, I'm curious to get your thoughts about X Prize, a
Yeah,
little bit about its history, and how that led to where we are now.
yeah. I mean, it's sort of getting forgotten in a way. But X Prize, Peter Diamandis, was really kingpin there of pushing that, and actually Dan Golden at NASA headquarters embraced that activity as well and got behind it. But Peter, of all the people that I got to know, uh, there was three of them. There were three people that I met in a bar in Washington D.C. Peter Diamandis, um, Bob Richards, Todd Hawley, three pioneers um, uh, that were there. And what struck me was not their intellect, but they were all the same height. I didn't understand how these three they must have met themselves, somewhere, and they all agreed about creating something called the International Space University.
Hmm.
They were the ones that got that kick started. But Peter went on to create the X Prize and really beat the hammer down solid on innovation, private groups. Come and show us what you can do. Let's all meet in New Mexico. They had a great show out there several times of bringing all these private groups together.
Hmm.
Many are no longer. they're no longer. Armadillo. There was a bunch of other groups that they all morphed into something. I think not
Mhm.
all of them, but some of them. But the people were really important. They were really innovation. But Peter deserves a real salute by everybody to have been the spark plug early on privatization of space, and
Mhm.
he's he's still a very active talent out there.
Mhm. Yeah, that I think more and more we're starting to see those ideas come to light. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier about like the fueling process for Starship, I believe is it Rocket Labs or maybe it's Vast. I can't remember off the top of my head now when I'm put on the spot. But
Yeah,
there is a company that is looking to develop essentially gas stations in space,
right.
so that when Starship is making those journeys back and forth, it has an opportunity to stop and fuel so that it doesn't orbit fab. There we go. So you don't have to make the direct trip. You don't have to carry
Yeah.
all the fuel with you. Is that something that you think is potentially realistic, and is that potentially something that we could see here in the future?
I'll know more in probably about 2 weeks
Okay.
because it's one of my article ideas I'm working on. I want to go back and try to look at rocket refueling and in space. We've had some demos.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the shuttle, they had a demo. I think they pump water back and forth just as a fluid transfer kind of concept.
Yeah.
But I need to go back and do a 101 for me and write an article about where we are today with the companies. Yeah, these private groups are saying that NASA's interested. SpaceX may have they attempted, I guess, some kind of uh, uh, demo up with the Starship on the way down, coming screaming in when it re-entered, uh, or previous to that. But anyway, so yeah, we're making it happen. I do worry. The only worry I got, I always look at, God, what can go wrong? That's why the curmudgeon part of me always shows up. I have to fight it. You don't want one of those gas stations to blow up.
Sure. Well,
And so safety of propellant transfer and the hardware, and can it take a internal problem and still be viable? I hate to see shrapnel everywhere, and we'll have more. And then we have to have the orbital debris garbage collection group come up and try to pick all that stuff up.
mm-hmm.
But I think it's clearly we're going in that mode, and
Yeah.
the Air Force is very interested in cislunar space activity. They want to refuel whatever their classified programs are doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like money's available to think this through, and hopefully we'll see some progress.
Okay. Well, I'll be looking forward to your update 2 weeks from now, if you've got
Yeah,
one.
don't hold me to 2 weeks.
Okay.
I may
No,
slip.
no hard time for it.
There's so much
But
going on now.
right, right. But speaking of kind of some innovative ideas here, I see we've got a question that says, would tunnel boring machines to build habitats be the most cost-effective method of construction and resource extraction?
Down on the moon or Mars or anywhere, I would assume.
On the moon and Mars, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, people are, maybe that's a ulterior motive of the Llama Boring Company. Once you get that technology, people are looking at, all kinds of habitats on the moon that either you go underground because of the radiation issue, or you try to use the regolith on the moon or Mars to cover your habitat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm lucky to have gone, and we'll be going soon to another meeting at the School of Mines here in Colorado. I'm up here in the mountains in Colorado, and the School of Mines down there in Golden has got a tremendous team, and they have really some very creative ideas, and they're pumping money into some projects there that will make a real big difference on excavation. And but the only again, the curmudgeon factor is, it's great to write all that, and then you got to start thinking, well, one thing that's missing here is actually doing it on the moon. We got to start testing some of these great ideas. I'm a sucker for artwork, and because that way people don't have to read all my crazy words. They can look at the picture, and I write a good enough caption. They get the whole thing. Don't tell everybody. Um, but we got to start testing this stuff on the moon. There is no way to understand the dynamics of the lunar environment down here. We try to piecemeal a bunch of models together and computer runs and doing little tests and simulated lunar, regolith and all that. The real true test is on the moon, all of it at once, 1/6 gravity. What's going to go wrong? What can go right? Is there something we've really missed here that can help us? Or is it something that we're not even aware yet that is going to turn, even surviving the night on the moon has become a big deal. I mean, we've seen the Japanese lander Slim. It survived, a 14-day lunar night. The Intuitive Machines lander, they hope to resurrect the lander again after 14. That's coming up soon, and we'll see. But so getting on the surface and trying things out. And this is where I part companies with a lot of let's go to Mars now. We're back to where the basics are. If you can't do it on the moon, if you can't figure this out on the moon, I'm not going to commit astronauts to go to Mars and figure it out on the spot. So I'm kind of on that page where the moon is the window to Mars, and I think NASA's finally gotten that in their vision statement. And unfortunately, the administrations come and go, and who knows what the next administration is going to be, and what kind of vision will they have for the long haul. They're going to go asteroids or something, which Obama sort of did, threw the whole thing off in a kilter for a while. So anyway, I'm rambling again. Sorry.
Well, speaking of the moon, we've talked about private industry, commercial, but let's shift gears a little bit to national interest. And so, prior to today's conversation, I was, doing my research, and I was looking at some of your books and reading some of the reviews online. And I was looking at the book Moonrush, the new space race, and specifically about China. So you've written a lot about China's space program in recent years. How do you view the challenge and competition between the U.S. and China and the efforts to get back to the moon?
Well, I think it's the real story. I mean, China is coming along. They're about ready to launch a relay satellite, or exploded, or something happened. I thought they were going to launch today or tonight. Maybe it's tomorrow morning. I'm not sure, but there's a lunar relay satellite that's critical for their lunar exploration goals. And that's going to be launched by China. But they have a pretty no. We're in a point, in my view. I'm old enough to remember Sputnik. I mean, I saw the upper stage that launched Sputnik come over Texas when I lived there, and back in '57, that was a pretty interesting sight to see an artificial object, something that humans built up there. And so we're at a point where, what was the question again? Let me get back
about
to
China and the space race, the new space race.
Yeah, we're at a Sputnik moment, is what I was trying to get to. That's what I was trying to remember. Back then it was a 184-pound satellite launched by the former, now Soviet Union. And, ours only weighed 30 pounds. Explorer 1, and that was right off the bat. People were going, we're in a space race, theirs is heavier, and today we're all trying to get, if we can make 30-pound satellites, that'd be great. So yeah, we're in a Sputnik moment. I think there's a real space race. I think Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator, is playing the China card as much as he can up on the Capitol Hill, trying to get more money and stabilize it. The question I have for Bill Nelson is, he's got to start looking at NASA and how it spends its money to begin with, and whether or not we need all those field centers, and whether or not it's working as a unified space agency, or it needs to be restructured. Is to me where we're headed, and because there's just not enough money. And you mentioned the public. A lot of the public is not aware of any space race or whatever, but all of a sudden China does this or that, and they're going to go, well, where's our program? What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we're kind of back to beep 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 beep. There's a signal coming out of China that's pretty much like the Sputnik, and we better pay attention to. And what it gets down to, for those political science people out there, it is capitalism versus communism. It's back to the basics. It's the China bragging about how their system is better than the U.S. They're on track. They're on time. They're moving out, and you see Artemis slipping year by year, and so okay, at some point, is China going to be there waving at the astronauts, as they try to attempt a landing at the South Pole, or and I don't know where it's going to go, but again, that's why I love this stuff.
Right.
It's exciting.
Keeps you invigorated.
Oh yeah.
And interested. I agree with you. I think it's kind of like the second coming, the second space race. It's again the U.S. versus large communist country, where we're facing China now to get back to the moon. Obviously, there's a few other players there. We see Japan, we see India as well. But really, the two powerhouses there, China and the U.S. getting back to the
I keep an eye, I keep an eye on Russia. Their talent there is still there. And Putin, I try to monitor as much as I can about Roscosmos, their Russian space agency.
Yep.
They're about ready to launch a brand new heavy lift booster, the Angara, advanced Angara, and that's a big new capability for Russia. And they want to have their own space station. They're kind of waiting. They're kind of part of the problem with the International Space Station, in the sense of having leaking modules and oxygen disappearing and whatever's going on up there. But that thing's getting old, and we don't know exactly what the lifetime of a space station is. We never had anything quite like this. So, I'm not saying it's time for bubble gum in the airlock to try to fix things, but there's stuff going wrong. And Russia has already committed themselves to their own space station. China's already got one up there. There's 3 people in there right now as we talk. They're getting ready to launch another crew up there. They're cycling their people through. So and then you think the private sector space stations, where are we going with those?
Yeah.
Axiom is working hard. There's a bunch of them that have got new ideas. I don't know. It's just break glass, roll dice. I don't know how it's going to play. It's great.
We've got lots to write about, lots of topics to cover. It's endless.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment.
Right, that keeps us entertained. Well, speaking of the space race, I see we've got 2 questions from Jennifer here, so we'll try to tackle both of these. Do you think this race back to the moon is reminiscent of the Cold War, and do you think it will motivate our space program budgets?
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. I'm getting fond again as I get older every year. It's the context of the times. I lived through the space race, the official, kickoff of the space race with Eisenhower and Kennedy and Nixon going through, and I think we're at some interesting moment in time about a space race. Now, the cool thing, and there are things happening that have not been reported too much. Um, there's little working agreements now between China and the U.S. on exchange of lunar samples. They're bringing, China is about ready to launch in May another return sample program to the moon on the far side and bring back samples that nobody's ever seen, kind of thing. And it looks like, NASA has worked out some kind of arrangement so U.S. researchers can have access to these lunar samples.
Mm-hmm.
My hope is that they better have this in play, because if China comes back with Mars samples way before the United States, are we going to see a similar type of agreement?
Mm-hmm.
But again, Mars is so diverse, so big, so much interesting. Pascal Lee here the last couple of weeks had a great finding of an old volcano with glacier potential ice underneath. Mars is so crazy. There's so many things there that we can tap into that keeps our motivation going about exploring that place. So I hope, one thing that may come out of the Mars sample return, and if they don't, I'll be critical. They're going to have to come up with backup plans. I think we better have a low cost Mars exploration program, and we can do a lot with low cost.
Mm-hmm.
Those samples, if China's bringing them back, not to say they can't fail, which it may, they could do it. And they're practicing on the moon the same kind of philosophy of technology that they're going to use at Mars. So, it's not to say they can't fail, but I'm not quite sure I need the samples back. It's not that urgent to me right now, and I'm still worried about Andromeda strain and a lot of other issues that seems to be latent in the whole Mars sample return program that they're going to have to address before we really see the U.S. program go forward. And what is China doing for back contamination?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need another Wuhan lab escape problem if that's what happened for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And, so what are they thinking about bringing Mars samples back? I have not to this day, and I've tried. Who's the who in China that knows about Mars return sample and back contamination? Who's the person?
Yeah.
What group's looking at it?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jennifer, for those two questions. I see we've got another one. You mentioned low-cost mission. So this question is from Michael Lane. What does a low-cost mission look like?
It's cheaper than 10 billion. That's all I know.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
That's one thing. But I think there's a kind of a move on with a new Jet Propulsion Lab did some early work on a program called SHIELD, which is sort of a nose cone like thing that you can deliver mini rovers or other kind of devices, seismometers, all kinds of things, and shoot those everywhere. Lob them out to Mars and let them do kind of a, look at different types of environments on Mars, including the polar caps, which are going to be fascinating. So yeah, low cost is for me is anything below 11 billion bucks for a Mars sample return that makes the geology community just excited, But what about those exobiology people and astrobiology and some other people that are doing stuff?
Oh yeah.
Their turn's coming.
Oh yeah, we've talked with a couple of those. We in January spoke with Dr. Graham Lau, astrobiologist, and that was a great conversation as well. Yeah,
I think there's ways that we can look for life on Mars, and to this day, I'm not convinced that Viking didn't find life on Mars in 1976, and we, maybe we're smarter now to take that data, whatever data is left, to reanalyze it, but it's conceivable. And there are some people in the Mars community that are pretty uh, strong-headed on this. That maybe that experiment did find life. So
Hmm.
we'll see. So I think there's ways to lob. I mean, if the question is life on Mars, I'm sick of hearing about it. Let's get to the answer. Is there? Is it dead? Can you prove it? It could be somewhere up in the caps. It could be, some leftover Martians hanging around in biology, somewhere in a crater, or it's underground, or you got to drill. I just wrote a story for space.com on honeybee robotics, a private
Hmm.
group that
Yeah.
has some great ideas, on drilling deep on Mars and looking for life and looking for water ice. What's in that water ice?
Yeah. It's an exciting time, and we're waiting for answers. And I love how assertive you are. Like, just we got to get to the answer. We gotta find out yes or
Let's
no.
go. I'm too old. I can't wait.
Been waiting long enough. Ready for an answer.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's see. I've got a couple other questions, from your perspective as an author, but I want to make sure that I ask this person's question, which is there some group, technology, entity that people should be keeping an eye on that not most journalists or is on most journalists or space enthusiasts' radar?
Now, why would I tell you that?
Because we're the in crowd right now. We're
Yeah, well,
among friends here.
I'm in with the in crowd. Wasn't that a song somewhere? Um, no, there are groups. I frankly, the one that I've not met the head of it, Peter Beck, I guess. Is it Peter? Yeah, with Rocket Lab, running Rocket Lab.
Hmm.
Man, uh, they're making some headway there, and I'm very fascinated by Beck's and Rocket Lab's interest in private planetary exploration, particularly at Venus.
Hmm.
And they've already got potential of having a mission in early next year, working with Sarah Seeger at MIT and the group there on a low cost planetary Venus um, probe that could at least get to look into the cloud system of Venus and see if there's anything very odd there that could be a possible habitat for life. So that's exciting. Private groups going off to Venus. I'm for that. Do it. And they've already proven all the hardware. This Varda Industries that just landed their capsule in Utah after doing some pharmaceutical run up there. That was all controlled by the Rocket Lab, and uh, so the pieces of the puzzle for Venus are there. And it looks to me like that's why I don't want to give you more detail. No, there's stuff going on there that's really exciting. Keep an eye on
Hmm.
those guys.
Yeah, we talked about that in January with Dr. Graham Lau about Venus and yeah, the potential for life in the clouds of Venus. Yeah, we talked about that. I know we're coming up on time, and so of course I've got so many questions, but just not enough time. I wanted to talk about one of your books, which is currently in my Amazon cart, Mars: Our Future on the Red Planet, and I saw that it had great reviews online, and I was reading through some of the reviews, and they were overwhelmingly positive. My question to you, as a longtime journalist, media person, author, how do you react to negative criticism, especially in the digital age where there are endless internet warriors who all have, an opinion that they want to share online? How do you react or deal with potential criticism, people that have different opinions or ideas on about what you're publishing?
Poorly.
Okay. Okay.
No, no. If you think you're the only one that knows everything, you're crazy. I depend on my criticisms of people, or you didn't think this through enough. You should be doing this. People send me story ideas. I mean, they
Mhm.
criticize me, but I'm lucky where they go, you ought to think about this, and I think about it, and so that's
Mhm.
been real helpful. If you ever think that you're the know-it-all, it ain't happening. There's just so many people now. I'm very fond of Everyday Astronaut and Scott Manley and
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
these people that are just doing great videos that dissect things. And I look at those, and man, I'm in awe of what they can do. And then you've got an entire community of satellite watchers that will tell you when the X-37 mystery Air Force space plane changes orbit.
Mhm.
And people are out there doing all kinds of, citizen science things that way, way before NORAD. I don't need
Mhm.
NORAD. I got these guys on my internet profiles, and they just send me all kinds of things. And I just Bob Christie in England. I was curious about something the other day, and this is a guy. I don't know how old he is. He may be older than me. He came from following Sputnik, but he is just one of these unbelievable orbit analysis guys that he sends me stuff, and I go, Bob, cut this to the chase. Exactly what are you saying here? And so he's great. He comes back with some great quotes, and but yeah, so I'm up for anybody that finds that I'm off the limb on things, and I just don't saw too fast. That's all.
Sure. Okay. So you're saying be open to feedback,
Oh
uh,
yeah, gotta be.
but don't take it too seriously. Speaking of, everybody has an opinion. A lot of people online think that they are uh, experts, well versed, and they know what they're talking about. But that leads me to the ideas about ChatGPT. So,
Yeah.
writing is a challenging skill, and you've done it for a long time. Do you see that the creation of tools like ChatGPT is potentially going to hinder the work of authors? Is it an existential issue for journalists? Should they rely on these tools, or is it inherently better for that are authors meant to not use ChatGPT? What are your thoughts on this?
I don't have anything, it's like AI chat, people say, I've got when it started getting out there more in the public eye, I had people saying, well, you might as well retire. There's just going to be AI chat. They're going to write all the stories. There's no need for you in there. But I'm not sure I'm there or that. I don't use it. I have actually had some scientists send me chat, with their thoughts through that, and it was okay. But when you phone them, it's a different story. You got
Mhm.
live. You're asking them. There's tricks that journalists can do. One of the things I was taught by some preeminent journalists in Washington D.C. was if you're in an interview and you're fading out, you can't even follow what the hell the person's saying. You just pipe in and go, you don't really believe that, do you? And they think you caught them on something. They think that you know more than they do because they're covering up something. And you wouldn't believe how well that works. They
Okay.
backtrack, and all of a sudden you're getting fresh quotes out of nowhere, and you're going, "My God, this guy's she's been lying to me," but I can tell now what's going on.
I'm gonna have to use that. I'm gonna
So
put that in my back pocket for
yeah,
next.
you gotta. There's some tools of the trade that I don't think uh, chat or AI is onto yet, but maybe they will be. But there are tools that any journalist that's been doing this for a while is to, you know, make your interviewer wince a bit. You know, that's the best. Because I've got interviews where I know they were lying to me. You know, and we get back to it, and yeah, they try to correct themselves.
Well,
So
hopefully I haven't made you wince too much on today's conversation.
no, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm sorry if I've carried you back too far in history here, but all the time. But yeah, there's just so much happening. Great time to be a journalist. I recommend it to anybody that wants to write. Pick your passion and go for it. It's great.
Yeah. Any, as we about to wrap up today's episode, any advice or tips for people that want to follow in the same footsteps? They want to be a space reporter, journalist. What advice would you have for them?
The first thing is probably just go and look at the people that you really like to read. Find those people. And there's so many people that are just Jeff Faust at Space News. There's Art Technica. There's just so many great reporters out there doing wonderful things.
Mm-hmm.
But pick the ones you like to read. And I'm not saying copy, but emulate with how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
If you can find that special spark. But if you're into this, if you don't have a story and you don't feel like I'm onto something nobody's got, if you don't ever have that, then you probably go somewhere else and do some other thing. You got to have some spark that says, hey, God, nobody knows this. I'm the only one. How fast can I type this up?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to go through the editors, which is you never know what's going to happen. I got great editors or gods and maniacs. There Lee Billings at Scientific American is one of my best support guys. He's a tremendous editor. Space.com, Brett, Mike Wall, all those guys are terrific. So I haven't had a bad run, but there are every once in a while on the books, you wind up, you're really going through your paces on books because you got National Geographic there going, they don't want a lawsuit on anything.
Right.
so you can't, you got to be careful there. But yeah, but it's a great profession. I'd say the other thing to remember, if you're a freelance writer, just remember it's freelance. You got to get paid at some point. Freelance is good if you're not getting paid to get your chops going, but at some point you got to go, okay, the check is coming when? I got a mortgage to pay here.
Right. That's right. That's a good tip. That's probably the best one of them all right there. Charge a fee.
Charge a fee, but you gotta get to the point. The first article I ever sold, I sold to Air Progress magazine for $75, and I thought, my God, I'm retiring. This is great.
And here we are.
All
those years later. Well, I think that is a valuable lesson to everybody that's listening and, maybe has their own dreams of being a writer, an author, a journalist, a reporter, whatever that may be. Follow your passions. Try to find a story that somebody hasn't written before. I think those are great themes to walk away with. So I want to say thank you so much, Leonard. Thank you for being here. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Well, thanks for everybody for chipping in on questions, and you too. I appreciate all the thought you put into this. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. Well, thank you everybody that tuned in today. Audience, you guys had great questions as well. Want to close out today's show, which is, again, a major thank you to everybody. Reminder, Mars Society convention's coming up, so check out the website if you are interested in joining, submitting a poster. Thank you to our friends at Liftport, Michael and Leah. Thank you for your help today as well. And I'm going to close out the show the way I always do. The best is yet to come. All right, everybody. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye, guys.